Hello, everyone. Welcome to Someone Would Buy My Business. I'm your host, Amber Christian, editor of Handmade Seller Magazine. And today I have Amy Regal here today. Today's story is going to be about what is it actually like as a buyer of a business. So we're going to get into all kinds of interesting nuances and details and things to think about if you've ever considered buying an artisan business. So welcome to the show, Amy. And can you tell us a little bit about the original company that you started that got you into the craft industry?
My company's name is Uniquely Crafts, and I originally started this actually way back with Swedish weaving. And it's a lost art, and James Thompson quit making the products. So I switched to the diamond art before it actually, like overseas, started selling it here. And we would make our own designs. We made them so they fit a standard size frame, which sets us apart. And we package them. I put a lot more color variations into it. And so that was my original business that I still am in business for today. And then we bought the new crystal art business
Mhm.
just about 6 months ago.
Now, this is an interesting story about how did you know about this business? Tell us about how did you know this business even existed?
So the couple that I bought it from, they would go to shows that I was at, and they would sell the iron-on crystals, and of course, diamond art. People thought that my beads were actual crystals that could go onto quilts. And if you go to a lot of quilt shows, you'll see a lot of crystals on the quilts, and people like to decorate their quilts with crystals and all that fun stuff. And I would be like, no, they're over in this booth. Or if I wasn't at the same show that they were at, I'd be like, no, here's their information. And so that's kind of how I started thinking about when they wanted to sell this, that this would be a great opportunity because I not only could have the diamond art, but I could also have the crystals for so when somebody came into my booth and asked if these were iron-ons, I could be like, yes, this section over here is, because I would split my booth in half where there'd be diamond art and then there would be crystals. And so it kind of worked together into one.
Mhm.
So it's just hard to separate because I call the diamond art beads and then I call the crystals crystals. So it's hard to separate the beads and the crystals of the two different, you know. Um, so yeah, that's been quite interesting. Just I catch myself calling them beads and they're actual crystals and vice versa. So
Mhm. So now, when it came time to find out about buying this business, did they call you? Did they email? How'd you find out this thing was for sale?
So we've been talking for several years. We were actually supposed to buy it last year, but one of the owners had a medical issue that they weren't
Mm.
able to sell it last year. And then it was like this year they were kind of like 1 week before they were like, "Oh, so are you gonna drive to Phoenix and come get the stuff?" And I was like, "Okay, um, sure." So we left Iowa, drove through the night, got there, spent 4 days of counting inventory
Mhm.
because that's not all inventoried, and counted inventory for 4 days, loaded the van up, and headed home.
So that's definitely, a lot of people talk about, oh, a lot of due diligence and pull all the financial reports and pull all this other stuff. For you, it was more of you already knew what this business did. You knew it was
Yes,
complementary to what you did because
yes,
you've known this owner. You've known the owner from shows for a long time. You'd had your
yes,
eye on the business.
yes,
Things had happened, but it was primarily an inventory purchase. It was sort of a,
yes,
hey, we're done. So it's more like you weren't necessarily buying a bunch of systems and processes. You weren't
no,
necessarily buying a whole infrastructure. This is more of a, no, we're going to
yeah,
buy out your inventory and add it to our existing sets of
yes,
processes and build on what you already had. Now,
exactly.
in your existing business, is it primarily e-commerce? Is it shows? Tell me a little bit more about that first business and what kind of a
So
structure you had set up.
the first business, I mostly just do shows and online. There are several places around where I live that I
Mhm.
actually have like a booth that we restock, just because I don't want people coming to my house. And I've had somebody call me and I'm like, we're right outside your house. Can we please get this? And I was like, okay, how do I get my address off of here? um, so I do have some local places just because that way people are like, oh, well, so they can just go there. But and then I also do wholesale on the side. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't have a more or a building. It's too expensive for me. And today's age, it's very hard, and a lot of people do shop more online.
Mhm.
But shows are my biggest, I think shows are more marketing than anything for me. And it gets your name out there. And also, I feel like you get to talk one on one with your customers. And I really, really enjoy, having all my returning customers, meeting new customers. And I think that's really special with a small business is getting to know your customers and having those returning customers year after year.
Mhm. So now, how much overlap was there between you were talking about going to shows and you also knew this other company because of shows. How much
Mhm.
overlap in the shows? Did you go to 75% of the same shows? Do you have a rough guess about how much
Um,
overlap there was there?
Well, as they got older and had more medical issues, they stopped going to shows as much just because they had a lot of medical issues to deal with. So I really didn't get to see them the last couple of years, except for
Mm.
some of the bigger shows that they normally go to. But I've known them for years, and so I knew what it was about. I knew what looking at their booth, looking at the customers. I knew that it was a great fit, just for the simple fact of everybody asking me, what if these were iron-ons. And also, they used to go out east, but they quit going out east, just because it was too hard on them.
Mhm.
And so I live in Iowa, so I can go out west or I can go out east,
Mhm.
so it's a great opportunity for me to get back into that customers that they used to have.
Mhm.
And for example, like I did Paducah, and people were like, oh, I remember when she was here years ago, so it was kind of nice to hear that. So people still do recognize her product.
Mhm. No, that's great. So you did an inventory purchase, which has got to have had its own hairy beast sort of problems, right? So
Yes.
you're buying up all this inventory. Let's talk a little bit more about what it's like to do an inventory purchase because it's not like you were doing one or two items. It's like, no, we're just buying the inventory. So, did you get
Right.
anything you were like, ooh, or did you have to get rid of very much as you started to try to figure out how
Right.
to get this up and running? What did that look like?
So when you, so they've been in business for over 40 years.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of stuff that was a lot older, falling apart. Um, she did give me like 10 tubs of just free stuff that we had to go through. I'd say 90% of it was probably not the best shape.
Mhm.
That we ended up, well, maybe less than that. But I mean, it was stuff we could still kind of work with and still kind of make something fun of it. Um, and some ideas. So we did keep a lot of some of the stuff, but some of the stuff it was just no good anymore. And so it was about 15 trash bags of stuff over time. And,
Mhm.
some of it we were like kind of like, oh, what is it? Or, oh, this is, back in the time, like, it was, got milk, got hair, like everything got is what I got, I was just like, oh my gosh, how many more gots are there? I can't even tell you how many gots there was. It was back in the day when that was popular, you remember?
Right.
Like got
Yep.
milk. Yeah, it was
Mhm.
like got hair. And I'm like, I can't sell that. Like that's like, you know, everything was got. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't, And so
Mhm.
just interesting things that I got. And it was yeah, I mean, we counted all the other stuff, which was a lot of work.
Mhm.
But you get what you get. I mean, I got stuff that I probably won't be able to sell, and it's just
Sure.
thinking outside the box and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it was an eye opener on some of the stuff of what am I gonna do?
Mhm. So you definitely had some inventory write-offs, right? Some things that were given free, some things that you're like, "No, I'm just gonna have to." It's just part of the
Yes.
package, right? Because
Yes.
it's not like you most companies, when you buy something, it's not like you cherry pick, "Well, this little piece of inventory or that." No, you're
Yeah.
buying the
No,
whole
you get
thing.
the whole
You
thing.
get the
Yeah.
whole thing, and then you work through the other stuff, right? And
Right.
so I think there's a key lesson in buying a business is there's a whole period of time where you just have to work through the thing you bought. You're not
Yeah.
gonna be up and running day 1 with this
Right.
new thing that
No.
you bought. It's not gonna be seamless. So now you
Right.
discovered a few gems, for a pun. I'm sorry, Kristen.
Yeah.
In how the
Chris.
inventory was tracked. Tell us a little bit more about that. You had a few surprises when you got a couple
So
customer calls.
so for one, we got home Sunday night, and she has a mailing list. So she put out that, they had sold this part of the business. She still does applique,
Mhm,
and she had sold part of the crystal work to us, and that, give me a couple of days because we were still using her website,
mhm,
and give me a couple of days, and she put my phone number in
mhm.
the newsletter. So come Monday morning, I got lots of phone calls. Hi, my name is. Hi, my name is. And I'm like, I can't even see straight. I just drove 24 hours home. But anyways, so yeah, so I had a customer call on Wednesday that wanted to place an order. And basically we had started a filing system. So I started a different way than what she had them organized in. She
Mhm,
had them just laying on shelves in stacks, and it was too hard for me.
mhm,
So we came up with a filing system, and so we started putting our manufacturer SKU, all of that stuff on it. And a lady called me on Wednesday, and she's like, I'd like to order like 98-NL and, 2-TR. And we're like, what is that? And so Alice and my sister in law, who helps me, um, we get on our website and we put in the SKU number, and come to find out she did make her own SKU numbers.
right,
So we're going by a different SKU number than what she is. We're inputting them into our website as what we would have to reorder or do things with.
mhm,
And here we now have another situation to deal with of trying to figure out the SKUs. And I guess I never paid attention to it, and I never really asked what those numbers were written at the bottom, because I really didn't think about it.
right,
And yeah, so they were her SKU numbers. And of course, when you're in business for 40 years, you know your SKU numbers. I
right,
I don't know them. I don't know what these are. And so the struggle was real on that part. Like, we had to go in and start putting, like, not only our SKU number in, but also her SKU number in, just
right,
so we could figure out what if somebody did call. So,
right. You had to have a way to look it up, and so now, you're early on, you're starting to integrate it into your business, and you
mhm,
realize, "Oh, we're using the manufacturer's the real SKU number that was
mhm,
assigned." But the SKU that she's using is her own assigned SKU, so you have to have a cross reference, and so now you have to
yes,
scramble a little bit to go, "Okay, we gotta go back to the inventory and get all of these cross
right.
references set up." Did you actually have them on were they labeled on the inventory, or did you have to go back to the seller of the business to get
Some are written on, because see, we had gotten her website also.
Okay,
So we went on to her, but we couldn't actually like transition her website over to ours because it was an older style website.
sure.
So we had to transfer each image, each description. We tried to change the descriptions a little bit, kind of narrow them down. When she did her description, she would write, why she came up with it, or just
Mhm.
different stories about each one. And we wanted to make it just kind of more simpler, just so it made people kind of go through the website a little bit faster. Um, but I forgot where I was going with this.
Oh, so you did get the
Distraction.
website, you with
So
the
yeah,
inventory numbers. Mhm,
yeah,
mhm,
so we were going on there to get those, and then we were putting them on the file also. So we had two different SKU numbers. So it's now trying to figure out how to get the customers that she had to understand that our SKUs are going to be changing, not just, the way that she had it too, but we're still trying to work with that customer based on that aspect.
right, because now you've got a customer change management challenge, right? And
Yes.
it's one thing that's great is, yes, I brought it into all my infrastructure, so I didn't have to maintain 2 infrastructures, but oops,
Right.
now I've got a change management challenge, which is that's a very real challenge.
Yes.
You have one or the other. So, when you buy a business and you have to start thinking about the running some of these different processes, right? If you keep the
Mhm.
old business with its legacy infrastructure, its legacy processes, that's one set of challenges. You bring it all
Right.
into your infrastructure, that's a different set of challenge. Now,
Yes.
walk me through how that was a little different because you had a different set of internal processes than how she did her processes. Can you talk a little
Right.
bit about that change management process and how that's been challenging as you've been getting up and running and absorbing this acquisition?
So there's a couple of things. One, she has a newsletter that she sends out every month, which we do too. But she doesn't have it corresponding with her website. It's a separate one that she purchased that she does. And let me tell you, you don't get that newsletter out on the first of the month. There's a lot of people that look for that on her thing. So I was a
Oh,
little surprised.
interesting.
I was a little surprised on that note. But we now have it changed over. But the
Mhm,
problem is we need to go through and see, because she's been in business for 40 years and some of her clientele are a lot older
mhm,
generation than the younger generation. And
mhm,
so how many of these are really legit emails that are going to go through and people are seeing? So we're still in that phase right now,
mhm.
on the email side of it, because there's over 7,000,
Right.
and when you send out an email through our website, it only allows so many.
Mm,
So we had to figure out, like, we can send out one this day and one out this way. So it kind of helps with that part of it. So you're not having to pay for another bundle on your website.
that's
Um,
that's a very practical operations issue, right? All of a sudden now I've gone to
yes.
absorb the customer list and the plans and the things I have set up on my internal processes. Oops, I have caps, right, on how many emails I
Yes.
can send. Lots of us have caps on which
Yes.
plans and programs, and we
Yes.
might not be completely ready to just say, "Oh, I can just jump up multiple levels and spend a ton more money." No, you just bought this
No.
company. So now you
Yeah.
had to get creative in how you're sending that out.
Yes.
So
So
those
we do
first of the
two
month
we do
people.
2 newsletters. Yeah, we do 2
Mhm.
newsletters, and that helps with reduce, so I'm not having to go to another package deal,
Yep.
and it saves costs majorly. But the thing is trying to figure out, are they still, a liable email or not, or things like that. So I mean, I remember I have a Hotmail one that I've never used. Now I have Gmail. Who knows what goes to the Hotmail? I don't even remember what so I mean, it's things like that I look at. But on the other note, when we got the company, her customer base are more used to calling,
Mhm.
placing orders, giving them the SKU number that we don't know. um, and so yeah, it's been really difficult trying to teach them to go online and order rather than phone calls. The last couple years they were home a lot. They didn't do a lot of shows. And in
Mhm.
some ways I feel like she coddled a lot of her customers.
Mm. Mhm.
So, if they wanted something, she'd be like, oh yeah, because she was home. Well, when you go starting next week, I'm gone all the way till October. Yes, I have my sister-in-law that is here at the house and does stuff for me, but on the other hand, we have to have some kind of policies in place.
Mhm.
And so it's been a struggle of getting people to realize that, hey, you can go online and order. A lot of people don't want to use their credit cards. And we've tried to explain to them, even if we send you an invoice, even if we're still, it's still going through the same place. Even if you give
Mhm.
us your credit card over the phone, it's still going through the same place. So it doesn't matter if you type it in or we type it in, it's still the same exact thing. And
Mhm.
so it's getting people used to it. We don't keep credit cards on file. That's one thing that we had to really get rid of
Mhm.
because of if somebody broke into our house, just the liability. Now, back 40 years ago, that was something that was just everybody did.
Right.
And so that was one thing that we had to take away was keeping credit cards on file. And I just, like I said, it's the liability issue. And once you explain it to them, they do get it. But there are those customers that we still have to deal with. And one thing I've learned is if they don't like what we say, they do go to her and call her. And,
Yeah.
we end up getting an email or a phone call, and I get it, she's worried about her customers. She's been in business for 40 years. This was her baby. It's hard to
Mhm.
let go of something that you've had for so long.
Mhm.
But also there has to be some new changes also that need to be set in place.
Mhm.
And,
And yeah.
that's been the struggle of it all. We've had the same issue with some wholesalers too that we have a policy where it's 20, and we're not going to do 5, we're not going to do 3, we're not going to do 10, it's 20.
Mhm.
It's not a huge, um it's not 50, it's not 100. I think it's a reasonable amount. It's mix or match. You don't have to buy 20 of one item. And
Mhm.
so that's been another thing that we've had to try and explain. I mean, everything I feel like we were just explaining, explaining, explaining. And I feel like we're going to be doing that because things just keep coming in. Just a couple days ago, we got a couple of things. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very real challenge of the process, right? And even the way the acquisition happened. I mean, for you, it was a very strategic acquisition. It allowed you
yeah,
to expand into this other market, and it gave you a starting point.
right.
And that was the key. So it made sense, but it meant you were gonna have to deal with some ugly and change management
Yes.
processes and customer expectations. Nobody likes to change. Well, very
No.
few people like to change. Like, "No, I just want it the way it is. I just want this one thing to not change." And
Right.
you're like,
Yes.
"I'm sorry. I can't have your credit card
Exactly.
written down because
Yeah.
that's a fraud protection issue." Like,
Yes.
I can't do that, and while people
Right.
logically know it, there's this emotional attachment to the way it was,
It
right?
is. It is. It is. And it's so hard, and sometimes, she'd be like, well, just this one person you might have to make exceptions for. And it's like, if I keep making exceptions, pretty soon, I mean, my time is valuable too. So by the
Right.
time you add up making an invoice, clicking on everything, sending it to her, that's a half an hour of my time that's gone when she could have just gone online and click, 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 pay, done.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
it's about
It
time too. I mean, your time is valuable.
Yep, yep,
And
and for sure,
yeah,
and you also will have to decide, an interesting part because of the nature of this type of acquisition is you'll also at certain points have to draw your lines on how
mhm,
long do you keep helping customers before you say, "Look, I" as a grace period, trying to be helpful, but there'll
right,
be a point that'll come, and only you will know what that point is where you say,
right,
"Nope, no more exceptions. You're going to have to learn to do it this way.
right.
Otherwise, we can't because your time is valuable because now you have 2
Mhm.
businesses that you're balancing."
Yes.
And so it's not like you were coming in and just taking over and have full-time capacity for one
Right.
business, yours was an expansion. So now you have sort
Yes.
of, not to say two masters, but you have two needy children, two
I
needy
know,
businesses,
right?
right?
Exactly. Exactly. And the thing is with the diamond art, like my customers are so accustomed, and then you get this new business and you got these other customers that aren't accustomed to what I'm so used to. And that struggle is so real. Like, I mean, trying to weigh it is just kind of like, oh my goodness. Like every day it's like, what kind of email am I gonna get today? So I
Do
mean,
you
it's
do you think that you underestimated how much of this custom stuff there would be? Do you think that, or do you think you had a good sense of it, or were you like, "Oh, there was a lot more of this than I was expecting?"
some of it was a little bit more than what I expected.
Mhm,
I kind of had some thoughts just because of like how old the business is and
mhm,
how she worked with her customers. And don't get me wrong, we love to work with our customers. We love to, during COVID, I would call, people call and stuff like that. But, I when you're so busy, you just kind of you got to set those boundaries, and that's where my struggle is.
mhm, mhm.
Um, so
Yeah,
yeah.
mhm. So, do you think now you bought this business, you bought the inventory, and one of the things you recognize, like looking strategically at it, is you wanted to update and modernize some of the designs,
Right.
right? And so, walk me through kind of where did you start on that process, and then how is that starting to play out in the business?
So her designs, she's got great designs, don't get me wrong, but the problem is there's no younger generation designs. I feel,
Mm, sure.
sayings are really popular. Different things are super popular, and I really felt like it kind of needed a refreshment.
Hmm.
And looking at her designs, it was kind of like, how am I going to sell this? Like, what am I going to do differently? Um, I don't know how I'm going to sell, like, I love my horse with a heart. It's more of a child one, so do we cut this off and put this with this and put this with this and cut the heart out and put it on a little zipper bag? For example, like here, these little stars were like a neckline that's not selling. So
Hmm.
we cut them apart and we put them on headbands. So it's thinking outside the box of what can I do with this. Now we're going to start trying maybe doing some decorative pillows. Now, on one note, most of people at like the quilt shows, they buy the design, take it home and put it on themselves. We do have instructions. So we don't always put it on at the shows, but with cutting these apart and making a design, a lot of people can't think that way like some artists do.
Hmm.
And so trying to just make ones up already done and just selling them, I think is going to be the avenue I'm going to have to go on some of these designs that I just don't know if I'm going to be able to
Hmm.
sell. Because the other thing is, I come out with new designs, and I'm not just using clear crystals. I'm using ABs. I'm using all these different ones. I'm making them bigger so you can read them a little bit better. Yes, the cost is more, but it right now I'm in the process of where people are buying more of the new stuff than the older stuff. And so now I'm in this way of, okay, how am I going to get rid of this and sell this? And so that's where
Hmm.
I'm really thinking outside the box of how can I cut these up, make this into this, or do this, and just kind of sell some of the stuff that has been here or been in there for a long time, for a long period. And we'll see how it goes. You know, I do a lot of quilt shows, but like we talked about, I'm trying to do other shows, and that where people will buy just actual stuff rather than us
Hmm.
making it. And so we'll see how that goes of trying to make our own stuff up and just selling pre-goods,
Yep.
than them actually taking it home and doing it.
Mhm. Yeah, so that brings you into a whole new market, right? New shows. You have to
Yes.
explore all sorts of new avenues for
Mhm.
selling. And so you're in this phase of saying, "Oh, hey, okay, hey, I've got some inventory I need to use up in some creative ways." That's gonna
Right.
mean at minimum temporarily, I need to do some different things
Right.
and to get that inventory used up. Otherwise, it's just gonna sit there and age and become completely unsaleable. So,
Right.
while there is still value to be captured, you're being creative and trying to deploy that in new ways.
Mhm.
Selling at different shows, doing more
Yes.
consumer-focused events, finished products, which is its
Yes.
own whole kind of beast, but it's a means to an end for using up that inventory.
Right.
And then you can see if you like doing that. If you wanna continue or
Right.
if you're like, "No, back to the other stuff once that's gone."
I know, right? Exactly.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's different, that's for sure.
yeah, and I mean, this is the real stuff. I mean, this is why I wanted to start the podcast because so often we get into real high level surfacey things, but then once you can actually say, "Well, no, here's really what day to day looked like," and so that people
Mhm.
can plan better. If you're thinking about
Yeah.
acquisition, be like, "Oh, yeah, I just thought
Yeah.
I was gonna. Oh, yeah, good point."
Yeah. Right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I look back at those 3 days of when we got home and just unloading everything and how much my anxiety was, like, through the roof and, like, "What did I do? What did I get myself into? How am I gonna do this?" And then going through all the designs that, were in those totes and, like, I mean, there was some good laughs, don't get me wrong, but, I mean, it was some long hours, and it's still long hours. I mean,
Mhm.
it's 'cause 80s, 60 to 80 hours a week of just trying to, because you try and go to sleep at night, and all your mind is racing of, "What can I do? What can I do?"
Mhm.
And that's a huge struggle for when you're starting a business or buying a business is that, that struggle of your mind just racing and racing of what you can do differently.
Mhm, all the time, because you also know that there's a limited window. This inventory can't sit there
Mhm.
forever, and so you've gotta get creative and get it used up within a
Yeah.
certain period of time as well. If you were to guess today, so you're about 6 months in now. If you
Mhm.
were to guess today, how long do you think it will be before you're fully up and running on the processes, when things kinda start to die down, when you're through most of the inventory? What's your best guess for how long it might take yet?
I'm thinking it's gonna be a whole 'nother year. I mean, we're still working on the website, we're still working on processes. I don't know how long it's gonna take with the customer base.
Mhm.
That's stuff still coming in left and right from different customers.
Sure.
Um, but just still understanding, like, the crystals, the designs, like how to do the artwork, how to do the different size of crystals. We're still in the learning phase of it. And, growing a business it takes a good 2 to 3 years. Really,
Mhm.
it does. But just
Yeah.
to get the process part of it done, I'd say probably a year, year and a half, just to fully have the process down. um, I know it seems like a long time, but when you
Mm-mm.
start adding up each week, you're like, "Where'd the time go? Where did it go?"
Exactly.
Like, it's already what, Thursday? Oh my gosh, tomorrow's Friday. Like, wow, I mean, your
Mhm.
days just go by so fast because you're constantly, and it's not just that. I mean, I'm signing up for shows, I'm doing this. There's more than just this part of the processing.
Mhm.
So, you have to there's so many things that go into it. So, yeah.
Mhm. Yes, you have to be ready. You have to understand, like you said, it could be a year, 18 months, 2 years to
Yep.
really get it fully, fully, fully integrated.
Yeah.
And you have to pace yourself. Otherwise, you just fry yourself if you try to do it
Yes.
exceptionally fast.
Yep.
Because you also have the other business. And so
Right, and
that
that's
all
been the
has,
struggle.
yeah, that all has to be
Yeah.
balanced. So now, how do people find out more about you, about the company, about the products? Where can they find you online?
So, our website is www.uniquelycraftsllc.com, or you
Mhm,
can Google Uniquely Crafts, and
mhm,
that will have the diamond art. We just put on to create your own t-shirt. We're still trying to figure that out, where you pick out the design, you pick out the t-shirt, and we put it on and send it to you.
Hmm.
So that's a new step to the program. But like I said, we're still working on the website to this day. We're still trying to make changes and stuff like that. But that's where you can find us. And yeah,
Hmm. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Amy. This has been delightful to get to
I
talk
know
about.
it's been so fun.
Yeah, I mean,
It's my
acquisitions are
first
interesting.
podcast.
Yay!
I know, one for
I
the
did it.
books.
Exactly. She's like, well, podcast tour, add that to my to-do list.
Right? I know.
Oh, all right. Thank you so much, Amy. And thank you to
Yes.
everyone for tuning in. Until next time, we'll see. Each week, I'm releasing the episodes for Someone Would Buy My Business? Question mark. Getting people thinking about
Right.
anything and everything on the ins and outs of buying, selling businesses, getting ready for it on both sides of the transaction because we love the crafts industry and want to help new businesses succeed. Thank you, everyone.
Yes.